This is Professor Mezzatester, your instructor for First Aid CPR AED. This is your review for CPR AED final exam. I'm first going to start with the initial assessment. The initial assessment is what you do when you first arrive at the scene. You must make sure the scene is safe. You take PPE precautions. Check for responsiveness and breathing. If there's no response, call 911. Check the pulse for 5 no more than 10 seconds. If there's no pulse, immediately start CPR and call for an AED. A child's pulse is greater than 60 but not breathing. You should start rescue breathing. The BVM is used for two-person CPR, adult, infant, and child. Advanced airway. An advanced airway CPR is a skill that's done by paramedics, and it is continuous compressions. Instead of doing 30 compressions in 2 breaths, one rescuer keeps on doing compressions, and every 6 to 8 seconds, the other rescuer squeezes the bag and gives ventilations. After you shock a victim, you immediately start CPR if there's no response. If an infant's heart rate is lower than 53 beats per minute, and they have poor perfusion, which is delivery of blood and oxygen, you start CPR. Adult chest compressions, you place your hands on the lower part of the breastbone. To rescue a CPR for the infant, instead of using 2 fingers, you use the 2-thumb technique. Adult, child, infant, rate of CPR is at least 100 per minute, 120 per minute. Adult and child, your compression is at least 2 inches or 5 centimeters. An infant is 1.5 inches, approximately 4 centimeters. The ratio of CPR for one person, adult, infant, and child, is 30 to 2. Two-person, child, and infant, the ratio becomes 15 to 2. Who needs CPR? Who needs rescue breathing? Who needs to be monitored? CPR is when there is no pulse. Rescue breathing is when there is a pulse and not breathing. And monitoring the ABCs, airway, breathing, and circulation, means that the person has a pulse, they're breathing. You stay with the person until paramedics, EMTs arrive. When the AED is first available, you turn it on. It will then tell you to attach the pads. It'll then tell you it is analyzing, and then it will tell you whether or not to shock the victim. When there's a foreign body, this is a choking victim. When you cannot ventilate and give breaths, you start compressions, 30. You open the mouth, you look in. If you see it, you try to remove it. And then you give breaths to see if they go in. If the breaths go in, check the pulse and see if you have to start CPR. If breaths don't go in, continue compressions, foreign body check, finger sweep, and breaths until air goes in. As I mentioned before, you check the pulse for 5 seconds, no more than 10 seconds. Breathe only until the chest rises. Start CPR within 10 seconds if possible. CPR and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation means that you don't have a pocket mask, you don't have a bag valve mask, and you're able to put your mouth on the victim's mouth, pinch the nose, and give 2 breaths. Rescue breathing, child and infant, give a breath every 3 to 5 seconds. An adult gets a breath every 5 to 6 seconds. 6 reasons you may want to stop CPR. If there's a sign of life, the scene becomes unsafe, EMTs, paramedics arrive, you get physically exhausted, the AED arrives, airway becomes blocked. Defibrillation is to shock the victim. Asystole, ventricular fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia. Asystole, no pulse, no breathing, no heartbeat. Ventricular fibrillation, a disorganized heart rhythm. Ventricular tachycardia is a rapid heart rate. We sometimes say VFib for disorganized. The AED will tell you to shock this person. Ventricular tachycardia, a rapid pulse, sometimes VTAC. The AED will tell you to shock the victim. When a person goes into asystole, it'll say no shock advised, start CPR. When there's no shock advised, if there's no sign of life, start CPR. Monitor the ABCs, as I mentioned before, is you're monitoring the airway, breathing, and circulation. A pocket mask is used for rescue breathing. For CPR, 1 person, adult, infant, and child. The BVM is used for 2-person, adult, infant, and child. Remember, mouth to mouth is only used if you don't have a pocket mask, don't have a bag valve mask, but you may not be willing to put your mouth, especially with the coronavirus right now. So you might do just hands-only CPR compressions until a mask arrives. Remember the initial assessment, you're determining whether there's an immediate threat to life for this person. CPR circulates oxygenated blood throughout the body. Early defibrillation can increase the number of cardiac victims being saved. When you're placing the pads for use of the AED, the upper right chest and left side is the location. An infant, you may have to put the pads one on the front of the chest and one on the back of the chest, unless you have smaller pads called pediatric pads, and then they could go on the right shoulder and left side. Remember, in studying for your final exam, read the book, answer the questions, watch the videos, and if you have any questions, you could always email me and we could discuss and go over the questions you have. Thank you. Stay safe. Stay healthy. See you soon.